The budget-focused B550 motherboard just came out in June of 2020, and I, like a lot of you, have been wondering about the value proposition. Is this made for just maybe small-time gaming? Or are you going to be able to do a lot of what the X570 can do, just at a cheaper price? So I decided I'm going to find out today. I haven't done a full PC build on this channel for quite a while, so I thought this would be a really great time to order some on-sale parts and some parts that I've been wanting for a good bit, especially to just have a test bench PC that I don't have to disassemble my main PC every time I want to try out a part. The goal of this build is to make a compact and quiet PC that really could go in the living room and I could hide it in there and finally get one that is approved by my girlfriend that I am allowed to have in there and play on. Doing a Micro ATX build isn't able to go nearly as small as the Mini ITX, but whenever you look at the price difference and the amount of stuff you can fit in there, this I feel is definitely the better option, especially the Mini ITX is going to run about $50 to $70 more. Before I put together the entire build, I do want to get into the B550 chipset and discuss some of my thoughts on it, and especially cover exactly why I chose the Tuf Gaming B550M Plus motherboard as my option to cover this. Then I want to get into some fun with the other parts here, especially the 16GB kit of 3600 MHz RAM, so I am really excited to see how fast that goes and what the difference is looking like. Nothing too special about the other parts here. I've got the Ryzen 5 3600, obviously this is the most popular CPU still on the market right now, and even at $200, this was easily the best deal for performance that you could get. Still is, and this one I got for 167 bucks. No brainer, I want to give it a try. And I'm super pumped to get one of the smallest Micro ATX form factor PC cases that you can get right now, the Inwin 301. It's in black, it's got tempered glass. I've been wanting this bad boy for quite a while, just needed a good Micro ATX board. I think we're all set to go. But like I said, I got the Tuf Gaming Plus motherboard, and I did this for a few reasons. There were about 10 options available when I was looking. One of those is I wanted to go away from ASRock. I've been getting them the last few times and I've been running into some problems with the fan headers. It hasn't been responding very well, and I feel like the overclocking hasn't been doing well. The temperatures don't seem to be reading correctly. So I'm kind of shying away from them. I also think that Asus and MSI currently are making the best boards right now. I felt like this was the best one for the price. I got it for $159.99. This Tuf model does not come with Wi-Fi built in, but I do have a Wi-Fi 5 card that I am gonna add to it, especially if it's gonna end up going into the living room. And you know what, at its core, I do believe this is just a handsome motherboard, but these stickers do not. Ooh, it comes with a disc. Does anyone actually have a disc drive? I don't need it. I don't need that. Don't need it. Now overall, B550 prices range from about $150 up to $300, which is pretty comparable to X570, except X570 can go up into like the $600 in a lot of cases. But that Gen 4 support does come with an asterisk on the B550. On the X570, the CPU is going to connect to every component on the board using the PCI Gen 4 bus. And what that means is you're going to have that speed benefit to every single thing that's connected. It's all going to be running at that fastest speed that we have currently for consumers, while the B550 is only going to have that speed with the top GPU slot as well as your main M.2 hard drive slot. You got to dig a little bit to find this. They're not coming out and just screaming this information at you, but it is going to limit the speed of everything else connected to it. But at least for most people, that's not exactly something you're going to notice. The 3600 is going to be a lot better match for this than the 3950X, for example. You're going to be having more heat problems. It doesn't have as much power to deliver with an 8-pin instead of a lot of the X570 having a 12-pin. So the heat, and it's going to be holding you back on the overclock because it knows that it's not having that much power. You're probably not going to be able to handle pushing even the 3600 as far as you want, but a lot of people aren't going to be needing that. So it's not the worst thing to have. For those that have the 3950X, they're not going to be considering this anyway. Go get yourself a nice super board. This is obviously for, I'd say probably 3700X and down. But the weird thing is when you come down to it, the X570 and the B550 really share a lot of similar aspects. So why do they have to take the B550 and price hike it up to where it's pretty much the same cost as an X570? Ultimately, what I think it comes down to is they can simply charge this and people are gonna buy it. Zen 2's been incredibly popular. They are not really having that big of trouble with Intel at the moment. And with COVID-19 shutting down a lot of production, there just aren't as many components really across the board, but especially go look and see X570 boards. They're kind of hard to find. If those were in high stock, I guarantee you would see a lot better competitive prices on the B550. But sadly, this is the world we live in now. The B550 doesn't have to compete with a whole lot, so they can charge, you know, up near $200 for a lot of these. But whatever, no more sad stuff. I'm gonna get into building this nice little baby boy Micro ATX computer case. Let's get everything out. Let's just put it together. So I did have a 3600 right when they came out, but I was going through some stuff and I had to end up getting rid of it. But I've always been incredibly impressed. Anyone that ever asked me, like, hey Jeff, what should I pick up? Which CPU is the right one for me? And I have told pretty much every single person the 3600 is gonna do exactly what you need. And for us specifically doing this, I wanted to run 16 gigs of RAM and I wanted to run a little faster. Obviously, the 3600 can definitely do that. We're gonna be able to get it up to 3600X levels of power. I am very excited about the 3600 megahertz. Obviously, I could check the manual to verify this idea, but you know what? Those look really nice. Let's get us a couple hard drives on here. The 970 EVO is something I already had. This is my 512. This thing has given me more pleasure than anyone could ever dream of. Add our little adapter here. Once you install a couple of these M.2 drives, they're not too bad. I remember I was extremely scared. This one is a Toshiba 1 terabyte. That's about 1500 megabytes read-write. And then the 970 EVO is like 3500, 3400. I don't know. It's around 3000 read, like 2400 write. It goes pretty quick. So for most of the main M.2 hard drives, they are now coming with their own heatsink built in, so you don't have to mess with that. So I've got my Wi-Fi card here, but I guess I made a mistake. Whoop. Yep, really made a mistake. I don't see anywhere to put this. So that's a no. Wi-Fi card does not have its own PCIe like side slot for that one, but I can always put an adapter. I've got an adapter. We can throw one on here. So you're gonna see me throwing this Shadow Rock air cooler on the CPU, but I will be doing a water block and liquid loop for the GPU. This is because I'm going to run the 3900X on it as well, and I don't want to deal with having to undo the loop and let everything out, take it off, replace it. Just, I don't want to go through that whole hassle. I will later on be running a full loop in it, and I'll do the hard tubes for that as well. That will be very fun, very exciting. But the good news is the Shadow Rock 3, as I did in my video with some other tests, is excellent. It runs almost as well as the insanely large Dark Pro 4. God, would I stop dropping stuff? My lorsh. Plus I can throw a couple fans on there. It'll look mighty fine as well for this sleek, cool man build. Got my trusty Noctua NTH1. Always my fave. Oh, it's just so pretty. You don't want to ruin it. I am an X person. Here we go. Yep. That's right. That's fine. It's all good. I don't care. I just wanted the reason to get this case. I just needed a good excuse. Well, guess what? I found one, and my girlfriend's definitely gonna let me keep this in the living room. Best thing about getting computer cases is they almost always come with a free box. And You know people be moving. Oh, it's gorgeous. Look at that. We got a couple slots on the front. That's nice. I'm thinking maybe running it on its side like this. So put this in the entertainment center, just throw it on its side. Ooh, let's get this thing disassembled so that we can start putting stuff inside of it, and we'll look at what makes it so special. It has a couple other features that I really enjoy. I like that it has kind of the opposite layout where the power supply is going to go up top, and it even has a nice breathing area for it, as well as having the bottom side have slots for fans. So we're going to be able to line the bottom there instead of the top. I mean, it is just flipped. And then we also have the front side that we're able to mount our radiator. I don't know which side we're gonna do quite yet. There's plenty of places for fans, really. I didn't check, but it does appear we only have a place for one hard drive in here. That's gonna be a little frustrating. I'm sure I can slip one in. Got a nice channel to put all the cables. There should be a decent amount of room there. We shouldn't have to fill the main chamber. The tempered glass that goes on it has a bit of a shadow to it, and it looks like actually the hard drive is easily swappable from the front of the case, which is pretty great because then you can just pop down that tempered glass on front. Really easy, not have to mess with any screws, and switch these out if need be, if want be. Gonna be throwing in the EVGA Supernova 1000 watt gold power supply, and we're gonna have the fan facing down so that it can get some nice little airflow. So there's not very much room, and it barely fit going in there without any cords connected. So that's just how it's designed. You know, you're gonna run into this when you're trying to do any form factor, small form factor. You're gonna have to spend some time and make it work. Actually, nope, this could have come off the whole time. Read the manual. So I definitely should have planned this out beforehand. I didn't actually go in and measure any of the stuff, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stop real quick, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna throw it in, I'm gonna see if everything fits. Absolutely, the plan I had does not work. Everything's too thick, doesn't matter. The biggest problem I had though, and something I had to deal with, I had to get this water block on the CPU because sure enough, the Shadow Rock 3 is too tall and the tempered glass will not fit. So we've made a bit of an adjustment. We have the water block on the CPU. Now I think I through a couple hours of moving stuff around and actually planning, I do think I have a build ready for this. I think it's gonna work. By God, I really hope it works. So I've gone through and I finally got all the power supply cables put in here. We need to get the radiator on there with a fan. I need to get a little creative, find somewhere to put the pump. I do think it's gonna come just straight out here. And then putting the soft tubes on there, it's not really gonna be that big of a deal. Not too difficult, should look okay. That's kind of the part I'm worried about. Once we get the GPU in there, pretty tight on space. But if I can pull it off and hide the cables, I think it might look pretty good actually. So I did have to make some compromises. The 5700 XT that I use is particularly long, and that exactly doesn't work for having two fans on the radiator itself. I was able to put a couple down there, but there's just not enough space. I do have the in and out at the top. There's also not enough space at the bottom to actually get the tubes in and get them to hook up into the water block that I'm gonna have down here with the GPU. So it should work out fine. I do have these adjustable socket adapters that will allow it to bend and move around, so I'm not having to use that soft tubing and make it bend a lot. I do have a black tubing that I'm going to be using that's very, very thick, and that one especially is going to work very, very well, and I shouldn't have any trouble, but you know, this project's been nothing but trouble, so why the hell would it start working well now? I'm gonna be mixing it up for my normal. I'm gonna have a little bit more pressure coming in than going out, but that should still push out of the openings scattered around the case. I think that'll work just fine. If anything, it's gonna look very, very pretty. Now for the exceptionally fun part of trying to have this fit right here. Okay, it's gonna be a tight fit. Let's see what happens. So first I hopped into the BIOS, I made a couple of changes here and there. I got the RAM clocked up to 3600 megahertz and I locked the 3600 to 3950 megahertz on all cores. For the GPU, I just ran a slight overclock using Radeon's Adrenalin software. Now normally I'd spend forever fine-tuning everything and playing around making all the numbers just perfect, but this was just supposed to be a fun little project video and it's taking way longer than it should. I just want it to run and be cool, man. As is tradition, I started with Cinebench, and it's really good for testing all the cores on the CPU at the same time. The temps hung around 76 degrees, which really is a lot higher than I would expect on this loop, but I'm also not super used to the 3600. I ended up with a score that falls right in the average at 3401, and for comparison, this number is right below something like the 8700K or the Ryzen 7 2700X. And then something like the 12-core 3900X would easily double this score. I don't use it much anymore, but user benchmark is still a good test for all components to give a quick overall grade of the system as a whole. I do really like that they show what the same components are scoring in other systems, just to give you a good idea of how you're doing. And apparently, I'm doing pretty bad compared to absolutely everyone. For what I'm doing here, it's really not that bad. I could have run Precision Boost and probably gotten a lot closer to that 50% right in the middle, but out of the box, I just wanted to run a stable all-core overclock on it, and I just wasn't really able to get it all that fast, but this could be fixed, or maybe it's just the board really holding me back more than, I thought it might. But I really don't have a good excuse for the 5700 XT, I just don't know. But it is running way better on my X570, so let's go ahead and blame the board. Which leads us right into good old 3D Mark, which is almost entirely focused on testing the GPU. We got to keep in mind here, NVIDIA is heavily favored over AMD in the 3D Mark tests, so we really just want to compare AMD cards to other AMD cards. But even so, I got a terrible score of 3667, and even worse, when it was stressed, it hit 83 degrees. That's just terrible. For a real quick comparison, I ran a pass score of 4589 when the 5700 XT was paired with the 3900X. Obviously, that is a way faster CPU, but the 3600 was still not bottlenecking this bad boy here. Like before, I'm just having some serious disconnect between the board and the GPU, and you know what, this really sucks. Obviously, I can spend time, I'm gonna figure out what's going on, but for anyone else, and even me, I shouldn't have to figure this out. Why are they not running this well? So now you have plenty of people who are trying to figure out what's wrong with it, and on the forums, all you're gonna find is other people having the exact same problem. So good luck fixing that, and I guarantee you it's probably just going to be fixed with a BIOS update within who knows how long. Have fun using it later, nerd! But okay, I'm being quite dramatic. Let's forget all that. The card's still running, we can still play some games, so I'm going to hop into Assassin's Creed, and we're going to be running at 1440p on high to ultra settings. Overall, I would classify my experience and the performance as solid. If you own an AMD GPU, you're going to have to get used to the wild swings in FPS while you're playing, and, we're going to get a bunch of that here. While I was playing, it fluctuated between about 75 FPS to 115. It seemed like the card caught up and was hanging around 100. It was running pretty stable for a while. The GPU during this time was pushed to the max throughout, but the heats did stay safely in the low 60s. So I don't know what the other programs were doing, but while in game, this thing is running real great. But I keep seeing this junction temperature as being really, really high, and I don't know if that's an issue that could be just some bad numbers from the MOBO, or if really there's a sensor on the GPU that's running odd, or really if there's just a real bad problem. that I should be concerned about. So, you know, I don't know if it's the board. I'm oddly stuck in the situation where I don't know what to trust. I don't know if I should throw out the GPU or the board or both. I'm just gonna throw out both. Screw it. A real fast one, I'm gonna hop into Smite. You know, I play a lot of Smite, so why not use it here? Something of note, this is a pretty easy game to run, much like a Dota or Fortnite, so I think it's gonna be a good example of what you might get there. At max settings at 1440p, it was running well, locked at 150 FPS, which is wonderful. But a weird thing I kept running into is that Smite was running hotter than Odyssey was, and this wasn't even at max usage like Odyssey. I don't really know what to do about it, but the temperature never got above 70, and we are not having any noticeable drops in FPS, so just gotta deal with these weirdnesses. In the end, I'm not sure if it was more about the B550 Tuf motherboard or the B550 platform overall, or just this PC build being bad, but here's just a big old dumb video of organized rambling. If I could go back to past simple Jeffrey, I wouldn't buy the B550 motherboard at all. If you can't find an X570 at a good price, then wait. If you can't do that, then get the B550 until you can upgrade and sell it on eBay. Even on the much cheaper CPU, I was still held back, and the X570 is able to give much more power and more pathways and deliver just ultimate computer success. I'm just glad to be done with this video. I hate this video, but I put too much time into it, the sunk time cost fallacy, and so I couldn't stop. And here's this just terrible, terrible thing. I can't believe whoever you are that you're still here after this awful, awful mess. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.